Thanks for tuning in to Electric Bike Journal. Today we're taking a look at the Cyrusher Ranger. This is a dual suspension, fat tire electric bike that packs quite a bit of power and really has shown us how capable it is off-road. So stay tuned for the full review. The Cyrusher Ranger comes in at $2,800. This is a dual suspension, 26-inch fat tire electric bike. For the suspension, there is a dual crown coil fork that has a preload and compression setting, so you can adjust those individually. And it has a air shock in the rear that lets you adjust how much air pressure is in that shock to set it up for you and your rider weight. The tires are from Kenda. They are the Crusade 26x4. They offer a lot of traction, and in this silty, kind of sandy terrain that we've been riding a lot for our testing, they've been great. We've had them aired up about halfway on the recommended air pressure settings for ourselves. And honestly, we've been thinking about dropping that air pressure down a little bit more, not necessarily for more traction, but for just added comfort. The Ranger has a 6061 aluminum frame, and there are mounts on the rear triangle back there to add a rack, and they do actually sell a rack on their website that you can order at the same time as ordering the bike. It has a Shimano Altus 9-speed drivetrain and uses Logan hydraulic disc brakes with 180mm rotors on front and rear. Now, most importantly on an electric bike is the drive unit it uses. The Ranger has a Bafang 750 watt, 80 Newton meter rear hub drive motor and uses a 1040 watt hour battery. That is a 52 volt, 20 amp hour battery for those of you wondering. The battery is removable, and we actually pulled it out and put it on the scale, and the battery itself weighed just over 11 pounds. Overall, the bike with battery included is just shy of 80 pounds, around 78 pounds. So that 11-pound battery, if you are looking to put it on a bike rack and your rack quite can't take that much weight, you could remove that battery and help drop the weight of the bike by a significant amount. On the handlebars, there's a nice large color LCD display that's super bright and makes it easy to read even on bright sunny days like today. The display shows you all your basic readouts from speed to what pedal assist mode you're in and more. On the left side of the handlebars there, we have two separate controllers, one of them to alternate between your pedal assist modes and turn the bike on, and the other controller is for the headlight and tail light, and a special button there for your horn. Something cool we see on the Ranger is the inclusion of a torque sensor, so this just adds to a better pedaling feel when you're out on some more technical terrain as well as cruising around town. Over here on the right side of the handlebars, we have a nice quarter turn throttle that's nicely integrated into the right hand grip, and it's one less thumb throttle hanging down off the bars, so it kind of keeps things a little bit tidier. It will supply power up to the maximum speed for whichever pedal assist mode you're in, so you don't have to worry about pedaling in pedal assist mode and then hitting that throttle and then all of a sudden you're going max speed. And you can kind of control how much assist you have through those pedal assist modes on into the throttle. With that dual suspension and those fat tires, the Ranger is super comfortable cruising around town and out on bumpy single track, light duty trails like we're on today, and it will maintain that pedal assist speed up to 28 miles per hour. Well, now that we've gone over the specs on the Ranger, let's get into some of our ride impressions and how it feels out on the road. First impressions of riding the Ranger, out here on some pavement, got a light grade. You feel the weight of the bike underneath you. As mentioned earlier, it's close to 80 pounds, and you feel it planted on the ground. It's not lifting up, it's not bouncing around. We have the suspension, a little soft just to get some motion on it. We've been playing with different compression settings to let that fork move and being able to adjust the preload. We noticed that preload there is nice to stiffen it up to allow motion without kind of locking it with that compression ring, but it also puts a lot of pressure on that spring, so if you do hit a bump, it really shoots the wheel back really harshly. That 750 watt rear hub motor, as I mentioned earlier, that 80 Newton meters of torque really help you kind of get up to speed real quick and be able to stay in a nice higher gear and 18 miles an hour pedaling up this hill. And you feel it drag a little bit, but you're not working hard to pedal up steep stuff. The brakes feel really good. This kind of slows you down and stalls you out in a nice even flow. And it doesn't really jump around, that long wheelbase, kind of a little bit slacker head tube angle, and those really big, fat, wide tires really keeps you real square and planted, which is nice. It is a dual suspension electric bike that lets you get out on some little trails. I'm gonna go ahead and make it a little easier and put it in a higher gear. Just take my time pedaling, but this is pedal assist mode 4. And climbing up this path, no big deal. These big fat tires offer plenty of grip. It really does have quite a bit of power. Not quite as much as some of our e-mountain bikes, but if you're not on crazy technical stuff, that's totally fine. Well, I'm 6 foot tall, and there is a little bit of room here to angle the bars back, but in a comfortable ergonomic shape here. That long stem, I would say, you know, based off of their size range, that a shorter rider might feel uncomfortable or a little stretched out on this bike. Equally, the taller riders, you know, that 6'6" top end of their range would feel a little bit too tight on there. And I have the seat post out pretty far actually, and I would be surprised if a tall 6.5 foot person would be able to get enough height out of that seat post based off of the existing seat post without getting an extension. Up here, we'll just cruise around in that high power mode and show you kind of how well it does from a stop sign here at going fast. I'm gonna get going, 10 miles an hour, and I'm not even through the turn yet. This is a flat ground, not super windy today. We're gonna hang a right. And goes nice and fast. We brought up that really big chain ring, and you can see how slow my feet are moving up and down, up and down. It's definitely geared for going fast and on open roads like this, which is kind of a bummer on really steep terrain. You don't really have all the gears there to get the pedaling support you need, but you got a throttle, so that'll help recover some of that lost effort. Well, those were just a few examples of what it's like to ride that Ranger around, both in the neighborhood and out on the streets, and equally on some dirt paths and trails, and some of the things that might come up on you, and some of the places where it might surprise you as to how well it performs. Some takeaways for us when riding the Ranger were that its overall stature and balance, it's really planted and really square, so riding around town and out on some dirt paths, it really felt planted and it felt stable, and that gives you a lot of confidence. It makes you feel really in control. A 750 watt rear hub motor, especially paired with that 52 volt battery system, as a whole was able to come together in a nice package to supply a lot of power to get you up to that 28 mile per hour mark and help you cruise around town effortlessly. If you don't want to pedal, being able to use that throttle, it was all very comfortable. Some of the things that we took away when looking at this bike, we have to remind ourselves this isn't a e-mountain bike. This is a dual suspension fat tire electric bike. And it's very heavy, so out on very technical and rough terrain, you feel that weight and it kind of throws you as the rider around. The suspension isn't quite the same spec or performance level of many mountain bikes and electric mountain bikes. Just having a preload setting and a compression setting, you don't have a lot of control on how the fork itself works when you're out riding. And we ended up running the preload all the way at 0 or negative to relieve as much pressure off of that spring. Now that did cause the front end to dive a little bit on more bumpy, rough terrain, but it limited the amount of force pushing back and topping out when riding. The compression setting on there is more of just a lockout, so the more you stiffen that up, the more it just tightens down and doesn't really let the fork move at all. That is all great around town and out on lighter trails and within reason for a bike like this. And I think for most of you that are looking for this bike, that is where you're gonna be using it. We kind of went out without cameras into some rougher terrain, and it was able to climb up some pretty incredible things. But when going downhill and hitting rocks and roots and big bumps, the bike just kind of felt like it was overpowering you, as well as just the suspension was just very linear and didn't really give a lot of slower support for you as the rider. So it really made you have to pay attention to what was happening as you're more so just bouncing down the trail. But overall, when riding the Ranger around, we were really impressed as to the overall feel. We could view it, the weight, as a bit of a negative for those of you that are looking to put it on a bike rack, or maybe you have to go places where you have to move it around, and that longer wheelbase is kind of tighter to get a very nice tight turning radius and more narrow spaces. But those are kind of some things that go along with any bike that's long and any bike that has a dual crown fork on it. You don't quite have that full turning radius like you're used to. The weight, it is a little up there, but there are a lot of bikes that are really heavy like that. So the problem of how to manage a heavy bike and work with bike racks is just a generalized conversation that isn't a reflection on the Ranger itself. It's just something to keep in mind if you are looking to get it and maybe you want to take it out with you behind your RV or out on vacation trips or weekend trips. Being able to manage that weight and, like I said, dropping the battery out could help lower that weight, and it might work on some racks. Our suggestion would maybe to be looking at a light duty motorcycle ramp. There's plenty of places that sell them for very affordable prices and, you know, aluminum construction, but they're generally rated for a couple £100 or a few £100, and that might be a better solution for a lot of you if you are looking for this bike and need a way to get it around. All that being said, the weight and that suspension, although they aren't quite the best for really rough terrain and mountain biking like we like to do, cruising around town, light paths like this, gravel roads, that's where this bike really belongs and where it was comfortable and where we really had a lot of fun riding it. And even on a gravel fire road or a long driveway, being able to throw the bike around and cut back and forth and kind of skid out, like, it was a real fun bike to ride, and it has a lot of power and gets up to speed really quickly. So those are really the big takeaways for us, is that this bike was a lot of fun despite the weight, despite the lighter duty suspension on there. We were able to find the places that we enjoyed riding it, and thinking of most people that are probably interested in this, this is something to maybe cruise into town and equally take out on the weekend to do some lighter off-road paths and get out to maybe a fishing hole or something. All in all, at $2,800, the Ranger really brings in a pretty good package for those people looking to escape on the weekend, you know, get out in the hills and maybe save some abuse from their vehicle and, you know, ride the bike out to get to those remote locations and have a great time doing it. It's got plenty of power, the brakes offer a lot of support, and having those 4-inch tires, you can get out on that rocky, rough terrain and equally go cruise down the beach on it. It's got a good setup for that, and being able to play with the suspension to set it up for you, you're gonna be able to make it more comfortable in those environments. And like I said earlier, we've been running the tire pressure about halfway. We might suggest starting at a third and airing up from there to get it to a right feel for you. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to click subscribe. That helps our channel grow and continue to do cool reviews and giveaways for you. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions about the Ranger here. We'd love to answer those if we can. And if you have any thoughts, would you ride a big fat tire, full suspension electric bike, or is that a little bit too heavy for you? Let us know down below, and we'll see what you guys think. Again, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.